Nearly 40 million people live in California, and our next guest wants to be their governor. Caitlyn Jenner is running as a Republican to replace Governor Gavin Newsom in the expected recall election. Welcome. It's great to have you.
It is my pleasure.
Morning.
Great to be here. First of all, before we get going, how's Jasper?
That's a great question.
Yes.
He is fantastic. He would love to meet you, indeed.
I know, because I came to your book signing at the Reagan Library about Jasper and your dog.
You surprised everybody. Oh. But he is America's dog, indeed. You're America's Olympian. So you have all these things going for you in your life. Mm-hmm. Why do you want to run for governor?
Hope. I want to restore hope in California. Under Gavin Newsom, honestly, he has absolutely destroyed hope. 18,000 companies have left. We lost a congressional seat because so many people have left and there's less people living. It just shouldn't be that way. So what I want to do is bring back hope and make people feel good about what's going on in California and change things. I'm a Republican. I'm running on the Republican ticket. The economy is by far the most important thing that we have to work on, but I'm also an inclusive Republican as far as social issues. I'm in it for everybody. I hate the bottom.
We're going to get to a lot of that, but the trends in California are not your friend, as they say. You look at the highest homelessness in the nation. That's higher than Portland or 50%
Seattle. Of all homeless people live in California.
People are leaving the state. I mean, the last number we heard was 70,000. I'm sure it's higher than that, given the numbers of the last year.
My friends.
Your taxes are highest in the country, even higher than New York. That's saying something.
I know.
Third highest.
Gavin Newsom. Yep.
Third highest unemployment rate. How do you reverse those trends?
You have to look at the economy. You have to look at what Gavin Newsom has done over the years. He's destroyed the economy through regulations, through taxation. Like you're right, 13.3% tax rate. We have the highest consumer tax. We have the highest gas tax. Over 50% of our gas is taxes, just for state, not even talking federal. We've been taxed to death. That has to stop. The other thing that's killing it is regulations. We have 21.2 million words of regulations on the businesses and the citizens of California. That has to stop.
It's hard to start a business when you have that. Have you given thought
I can tell you a million horror stories.
Have you given thought to what you think would be a fair number or the right number in terms of the income tax in California?
You know, I have to look at this realistically. First of all, as governor, I cannot change, lower taxes. I cannot lower taxes myself. That's a process you'd have to go through. Certainly, I would be in favor of that. But I don't see us ever getting to the point where you have a zero, corporate tax rate like Florida or some of the other states. I mean, that's just not realistic. We have great reasons to live in California. People love to live there. They don't mind paying something in taxes, but it has to be a fair tax. I would want a tax system that is competitive with other states. And I think that's the best way to go, so we don't lose all of these companies.
So
we don't lose them. They can stay there, but they feel like it's a fair tax. Right now, nobody feels like it's fair, and it's not a good business environment. I was talking with one of the CEOs of one of the major companies that left, and I said, "Why did you guys leave?" And he said, "I left because it's just not business friendly there." Bottom line.
Come back to everything I just ticked off here.
Yes.
Let's say the recall's successful. You become the governor. Day one, what's the first thing you do?
Put a stop to any talk about taxes, number one. I can do that. And second, put an absolute stop to regulations. I mentioned earlier 21.2 million words of regulations. Put a stop. Let's not talk anymore about that. Let's just stop, hold it, and take a look. Put a review board together to go through every regulation. We have regulations going back to 10 years before the fax machine was even, built. We have to take a serious look at that. Coming back from that, finding out what's working, what's not working. If any new regulations go on, you're going to have to get rid of 3 other regulations that are on the books right now. So it'll be much more difficult. I also want to put a sunset clause in there. Every 10 years, every regulation has to be reviewed. If they don't review it, it's gone.
So it just doesn't keep going and growing.
So it just doesn't keep going forever and ever. Well, look what happened with CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, 1970. Ronald Reagan put that on the books. But the environmentalists, over the last 50 years, have put more regulations, more regulations. It's one of the big problems for the homeless issue right now. You cannot build in California. It's almost impossible because of regulations. I mean, they estimate we're down about 3 million units in California. The units that are there become so expensive, nobody can afford it.
But Newsom has a proposal to try and change that. He
has a proposal, but he hasn't done it. You know, you've got to get in there and do it. I would want to work on the homeless issue with public-private groups. Right now, Gavin just wants to put more bureaucracy on top of it, though the government's going to.
They're going to try to build some home. They're going to try to build some places.
Well, what happens is a lot of these charitable organizations, religious organizations, they really want to help, but they can't. They can't build anything. Okay, I would want to work with those people, public, private, work with them to get rid of the regulations. So it would take 5 or 6 months to get the permits you need to build the building, to restore that building, to start building homes.
You got to have a lot of work to do.
Oh, let me tell you.
If you think about COVID now in decline.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we can agree on that.
Oh, yes. Thank God.
And a lot of the impetus for the recall was based on COVID and the restrictions that were in place in California. As those restrictions come off, does it become harder for you to make your argument?
It maybe becomes a little bit harder, but California is not forgetting. I mean, mothers are not forgetting where their kid has been out of school for the last year, missed an entire year of education, of social activities, of sports. Moms, honestly, I think the mothers are the ones that are really behind the recall, okay? That is the #1 issue for them. Of course, he's going to try to open it up. He's also talking about giving all the voters, he's got no shame, a recall rebate of $700.
And where all those money's coming from? There something.
Yes.
You mentioned sports.
Yeah. So yeah, you got to work on those.
So you mentioned sports, and before we lose you, so there are a couple other topics we want to talk about, including the Olympics. But you talked to TMZ a little bit about the idea of trans athletes, and here's what you said just a couple weeks ago.
This is a question of fairness. That's why I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girls' sports in school. It just isn't fair. And we have to protect girls' sports in our school.
But in 2015, you said at the ESPYs, I also want to acknowledge all the young trans athletes who are out there given the chance to play sports as who they really are. How did your thinking evolve since 2015? Like, as you thought more about it, heard more about it?
First of all, I'm not running as a trans activist. I'm running as a California citizen that has lived there for 48 years, and I want to fix the system.
But a lot of people agree with you about what you said just a couple of weeks ago.
I totally agree. And you notice I did not say in that statement trans women. I said biological boys. What I would do as governor, I would put together a commission. Trans women can compete in the Olympics, they compete in the NCAA, but when it gets down to the high school level, there's no guide rules, there's no rules and regulations how they can.
Yeah.
And trans women who are truly trans, who at a very young age, started proper medical treatment, they've grown up as girls, of course they should be able to compete in girls' sports. But yeah, some guy who hasn't done any therapy, hasn't done anything, there has to be a review board. And I would be the first governor to put together a review board to review each case. Such a small issue. It's like a non-issue that's out there. And I would be surprised if there's 30 trans athletes in the entire state.
But to Dana's point, from 2015 to 2021, has your thinking evolved on this?
Of course it has. When I did that first one, when I did the ESPYs, that was my first public appearance.
Yeah.
So I've been around.
Sorry, but
I'm not changing.
Why did you say what you said then?
Because I said biological boys. Biological boys. It's not fair. I want to protect women's sports. I want to protect Title IX.
And I think when you talked about the moms are paying attention to that issue too, and I think
yeah.
so. The board, you would do a board. As a former athlete,
Yes.
Or maybe I shouldn't say former athlete. You're still a competitor. Now you bring this kind of competitive spirit to the governor's race. But we have an Olympics coming up, happening in Tokyo. But there are some scientists saying that maybe we shouldn't even have the Olympics because the COVID problems are there in Tokyo. Yeah. So that, from an athlete's perspective, I'm curious, like, how you think about that. And then also, though, you want to be a leader. How do you make the public policy call?
Yes. First of all, you know, back in 1976, I took on the Soviet Union, and I won. You know, today, I want to take on the teachers' union, and I want to win for the kids of California. Education is a big problem that we have here. The Olympic movement, I was involved. You know, fortunately, I retired in 1976 when I won. 4 years later was the boycott of in 1980 of the Soviet Union. And I felt so bad for everybody. I feel bad for the athletes, okay, that have been training and working, and there's a date. I trained for 4 years to peak on the 29th and 30th of July in 1976, 4 years of work for those 2 days. And the uncertainty that's out there for the athletes, I think it makes it very difficult for them.
Would you send American athletes to Japan for
Absolutely.
the Olympic in mid-July, given the concerns about COVID that's been reported for the past week? No change?
They would, no. You know, I think sometimes government doesn't give credit for people's intelligence. These athletes are smart. They know what's going on. They've been dealing with this for, at this point, it'd be a year and a half. They know how to protect themselves. They know who to be around, who not to be around. They've been training. They're the healthiest people in the world.
One last question here on this recall. History will suggest they're very difficult to pull off. I think we've got 2 of them in American history.
Yes.
History would also suggest they're only successful when you coalesce around one candidate.
Right.
You have Republican contenders like John Cox,
right.
Kevin Falconer, former San Diego mayor. Would it not be a better policy for you all to figure out who's the best to take on Newsom in order to succeed? Because the polling suggests right now you're at 6%.
Yes. I think, to be honest with you, I have not talked to either of them. For me, my candidacy, I am fortunate that I'm an outsider, okay? I'm not responsible for everything that's happened at all. I've never been in government. I follow it. I've worked as a, you know, as an LGBT activist, but I've never actually run for office. And to be honest with you, that's good, because the people that have been running for office are the reason for all the problems. I mean, that's why we have 0.3% taxes in the state. That's why we have all these regulations. These are the people I'm running against. I would find the greatest experts in all of these fields, keep them around, learn from it. I am a thoughtful disruptor. I have a good sense of thought and what is fair and what is right. And I would use that to decide the final decision of what's going to work and what's not going to work.
If this particular effort is not successful, will you run for something else, stay involved in public service and this newfound push?
There is talk if Gavin wins this. There's only, you know, not too less than a year before the actual governor's race. And all my people, we would probably stay, at this point, we would stay around. But I have gotten such good response from people. It's been so much fun doing this.
California is the 5th largest economy in the world.
It's bigger than Russia.
And you got a lot to figure out. Thank you for your time today, and we'll follow it.
Thanks for being our first in-studio guest since COVID.
Oh.
Making history.
History right here. I love this.
Indeed. Thank you.
Nice to see you again in person.
Yeah, nice to see you, and nice to see both of you.